Welcome to the Equipped Agronomy podcast, where we bridge the gap between seeding, equipment, and agronomy. This is presented to you by Bourgault Industries. My name's Curtis DeGore, I work as an agronomist here at Bourgault, and I have across the table from me, once again, Mr. Jeff Strukoff.
Good day, Curtis. Good to see you.
Yes, it is good seeing you again. It's always a pleasure.
So what kind of a fly by the seat of our pants conversation are we going to have today, Curtis?
This one is going to be...
Lay it on.
We'll see where it goes. We're going to talk on this one some Trimax Trials that we're doing. Okay, so Trimax Trials that we got 3 different shoots. We utilize a dual knife opener, our PLDS, with our mid-row banders. 3 different air kits, 3 different fans, 3 different placements, 3 airways. What else can it be 3 of? Manifolds, primaries, secondaries.
Like, yeah.
There's a few hoses.
Are we allowed to be opinionated on this?
You just give her.
Okay,
give her. What do you think about it?
Me personally, I love the Trimax drill. I do. I like the flexibility it gives you, the ability to lock banders up, put them down, split seeding rates, place fertilizer all over the place. It's the best of all worlds.
Well, that fertilizer placement.
As long as you utilize the drill to its full potential. That's the caveat on the whole thing.
We'll get into that one. And do we know how to utilize it all? Personally,
this is a work in progress.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of options with it.
Like but we do have some key findings,
sure,
initially that we can. Sure, I'm sure you're going to dive into those.
Well, let's just dive into those.
You lead the conversation, Chris.
So we've had this Trimax in one form or another for honestly 9 years.
It's been
even before we had our own dual knife. Just slap some MRBs on another drill and away we go to try it out. And ultimately the goal is just to play with this whole seed to fertilizer placement styles and this triple shoot system. Where we won't go back that far. I wanted to get into kind of our latest trials here where we're playing more with in canola, seeding rates with fertilizer placement though. And that's what this whole drill comes down to is the optimal fertilizer placement. Are we 100% set on where exactly everything should go? I would say no when it comes to nitrogen and phosphorus. Do we have some safety things that we do know? Yeah, I think we do.
Oh, yeah. So
this year, what we're comparing against in these Trimax trials, so we have the ability, just the dual knife, right? We can lock up the banders, and then we're putting all the nitrogen right in the sideband.
In the sideband, yeah.
Okay, so we've got that. And then we drop the banders down. Well, now we can play with, okay, we're going to put the FOS in the sideband, nitrogen in the mid-row, or are we going to split the FOS? Are we going to split the N?
Are we going to put FOS in the seed row?
Are we going to put some FOS in the seed row? Yeah, and we've got some, some actual studies on that one as well here that we did back in the day a little bit. So what did we find? What did we find this year? Well, this is anticlimactic a little bit. No significant difference out of all these different placements this year. And we threw in, so we've got another drill in there too, a single knife with banders on 10-inch that we always put in just as that was kind of Bourgault's always
control mechanism.
Kind of call it the control, right? With a single knife and banders, you put a little bit of FOS in with the seed and you put the rest out in the bander just to kind of keep us on a bit of a check there, right? To see where it ended up. So out of all these different placements, plant stands also comes into effect on this, right? And that's kind of the one that we found we can play with quite a bit when it comes to fertilizer placement. Bourgault's always been on the whole fertilizer safety thing, mainly with nitrogen.
Well, you have to be aware of that though, because it does influence your plant stand at the end of the day. Placing fertilizer in different ways will alter the number of plants at the end of the day.
And that's where we have these and if you haven't listened to our podcast there, our seeding rate trials, where we are keeping the fertilizer the same, we're just adjusting the plant stands. Plant stands can make a huge difference in the crop, right? In canola and in wheat, in some cases. But I would say the biggest one in canola, right? Lower plant stand doesn't necessarily mean lower yield. Some cases it means higher yield.
Yeah.
Those drier years. So when we start flirting with fertilizer placement and noticing how it affects our plant stands, so it decreases them for the most part. If you're going to put in a lot of fertilizer, like or close or whatever, if it starts to decrease your plant stand, does that mean a lower yield? No, it doesn't. In fact, it can help.
It can actually improve, yeah.
Yeah, so the fertilizer placement affects the plant stand. The plant stand then affects the ultimate outcome of the crop yield. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to everybody else. The long short of it is when you're seeding with a Trimax drill, in order to get the full benefit or to utilize it to its best potential, you have to manage your seeding rate because you're not having as much of an effect. The fertilizer placement is not having as much of an effect on the ultimate plant stand.
Right. And that's if we place it in a manner.
And then we're talking about canola here.
Yeah, in canola.
Yeah.
Right. So in that scenario, what we found over the years here so far, right, is basically canola on its own.
Canola on its own.
Put it on its own. No, even a little bit of FOS in there, have found it can decrease the plant stand slightly, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you get that pop-up effect, some cases, right? But for the most part, just concentrating on plant stand, nothing with the seed, let it do its thing. Then we put in our starter.
Immobile starter nutrients in the sideband.
In the sideband, right? Yeah. And we put that in there. So whether that's FOS, maybe some potash, but not a lot of nitrogen. And I think that's another key component of this.
Nitrogen all goes out in the mid-row.
Yeah, nitrogen's out in the mid-row. And in this scenario, right, we're doing a one-pass system. There's also other scenarios if you're doing a two-pass system where you band it in hydrous, or if you're going to broadcast it, it's just not in the sideband with that.
You're
FOS.
not creating a hot band to interfere with FOS uptake at all.
That's right. No FOS hot banding. Yes.
I think we had an episode about that, didn't we?
Oh, I'm sure we've talked about the old hot band every now and then.
We'll have to go back.
Hot
in
topic.
Time.
Yes. So essentially, though, nitrogen's doing its thing. pH levels up and down. Very non-welcoming, hospitable for root development, root growth in that band. But if you got a non-mobile nutrient in there with phosphorus, just can't get there.
Yeah.
Hence, you just don't get that early season
Pop-up
uptake.
effect.
And you don't get that pop-up effect. So seed on its own, FOS out in the sideband, nitrogen out in the mid-row. Are we 100% set on that scenario?
Still working on that.
No, we're not, I would say, because is there some things where, well, maybe in some scenarios there should be some FOS somewhere else? Should we play some, should there be nitrogen, right? Should we split that nitrogen up a little bit in the sideband, the rest out in the band? Should that FOS, should some go in the seed row? Should some go out in the mid row? Or should it all go in the sideband? And that's where we wanted to take a look at. And so one thing I wanted to bring up from this year's trials, though, and it actually ended up being the highest yielding this year, technically, not significant, but there was a bit of a trend where we split actually the FOS, not between the seed row and the sideband, but between the sideband and the mid row. So that's an interesting one.
So that one, explain the end of the day results on that one, because that one kind of intrigues me.
Well, at the end of the day, well, it was technically the highest yielding in our trials, but why we did it, we've played around with split phosphorus in the seed row and in the mid row with a single knife before.
Yeah.
This whole splitting of it, and why we're seeing a benefit from that in that scenario, is it because it's dual feeding sites, perhaps? Or are we getting that phosphorus a little bit deeper in the ground?
The stratification issue that we've worked on before.
Perhaps. Is it the fact that the banders actually double up the band and it doesn't tie up as much then? Kind of get dual concentration in there? That's another thought.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought so. So that one actually ended up being kind of, something that kind of said, hey, there might be something here in this Trimax layout of still splitting that FOS. What sucks about splitting phosphorus, or sucks about any nutrient, you're going to use up two tanks.
Tying up more tanks.
Yeah, you can't take one tank of a product and then split it down two different airstreams. So something to keep in mind. There's
something out there have been asking me for that for a long time.
Fair enough. What about the split nitrogen? Bringing in some more nitrogen into the sideband. We talked about the hot banding, but what happens if we didn't bring a whole lot in? What happens if we only brought in 40 pounds of actual N? So in this case, we're putting down 140 of total N. We're putting 40 in the sideband with that FOS, 50 pounds of FOS, and we're putting the other 100 out in the mid row. So that 40, which I would say isn't lots, well below any documented amounts of hot band scenario setups, right? I mean, maybe if it's really dry. But why would we want to bring this in? Just to get that little bit of nitrogen closer.
Closer
right?
proximity, yeah.
Yeah, there's been, if mid rows are far away or they're, you can't get there early enough in canola. Well, okay, let's bring a little bit closer in. Mm-hmm. And did it do better? Yeah, well, it was less than that split one where we had all the N out in the mid row. Yeah, nothing crazy. Like, again, this year's pretty good yielding in general across the board in the mid 60s kind of thing, and didn't see a huge difference. But something we're still playing with, still looking into, will do in the future. So what about our seeding rate? That's kind of the other thing that we've looked at the Trimax system in general.
I think that's the most important thing to discuss with this Trimax drill with canola.
If we just isolate these two, where we had our regular seeding rate. So our regular seeding rate, we're putting, it was 8 seeds per square foot we were putting down, which is about, was that 4 pounds-ish, something like that. And it depends on the year. And then we cut that by 20%. And that's kind of what we compared. And this year, again, the trend actually, a lower seeding rate, slightly lower, actually increased the yield a little bit. Mm-hmm. So not only did you put down less, you got more. That's how do you do that?
And you
see a retail perspective,
20% of your seed you saved. So
that you're going to do.
Yeah.
And you're right. That is, I think, the biggest thing on the canola with Trimax, and the way to utilize that drill the best is you do have to say, hey, I've got great placement here. I'm not risking the seed in any condition, wet or dry. I can comfortably reduce my seed rate, knowing I'm going to get a desired plant stand for the crop I want.
Like, I know when we were doing it and I was factoring in for the farm seeding rates with the Trimax drill, historically we'd be using a 40 to 55% mortality factor. As soon as we really dialed it in with the drill that we had at the time, we were in that 15 to 20% mortality. I don't know if we should even talk about that, but our comfort level never cut it all the way back to that level, but that's kind of the numbers that we were ending up with. So you need to, if you want to utilize the drill to its full potential, you need to reduce the amount of seeds you're putting down. So is that fair to say?
Yeah. Well, if you know what you're doing with your fertilizer and you're doing it in a safe manner, you're not pushing it, right? Like a single knife with banders, if a guy wants to put down more phos, and they're just like, well, I only want to tap 1 tank. Well, we're just going to put more in the seed row. Well, in that scenario, would I be as comfortable cutting my seeding rate?
No.
Probably not as much.
No.
Right? Because you know that it's just going to eat up some of those plants. Fertilizer, even though it's phosphorus.
You got to seed accordingly.
You got to seed according to your fertilizer placement. And not saying, again, that single knife and banders. I mean, over the years, it's been right up there. Again, all these yields, even back to 23, the single knife and banders did pretty darn good, right? A little bit lower plant stand, though.
Yeah.
And that year, it had a higher yield. We saw that in the seeding rate trials. So that was in 23. Showed up here as well in our, in that particular year with the whole Trimax setup, we had like 7 plants. I think we were seeding at 10 seeds at that point. And then the single knife and banders went down to, 5.86. Well, the yield actually was a little bit higher with that single knife. And so, but we knew that too in the seeding rate trials from that year.
Yeah.
Again, I just really like having that background. Okay, so let's change it up just slightly. Actually, before we go into wheat, I did pull up some information that we had done, whether or not I completely remembered it or not, back in 2020, 21, 22, where another one that we haven't done here lately, but I'd like to actually bring it in next year. We're splitting that phos between the seed row and the side band in both scenarios where we put the nitrogen in the side band or we put the nitrogen in the mid row. Does that make sense? Like, so we actually put no phosphorus and then we put all the phosphorus in the side band, or we split it between the seed row and the side band. And again, nitrogen in the side band or nitrogen in the mid row. Mm-hmm. Bouncing ball there. But in any case, what did we find with the Trimax? We'll just talk strictly to the Trimax in that case. Did the plant stands fall down a whole lot over those past 3 years when we put a little bit in the seed row? Not overly. No. It was pretty equal actually, to where we put that phos out in the side band. Did the yields do anything different? Maybe slight advantage actually where we put all the phos in the side band.
In the side band, yeah.
Right? So again, did it help? I don't remember seeing anything as far as a pop-up difference there because we don't have the nitrogen close in that scenario, right? We just don't, it's not there. So it can access it pretty darn quick. Are you tying up 2 tanks of phos though? Yes.
Yes.
Which, depending on what you're putting down, maybe you have your sulfur out of your tank, maybe you're not putting potash, maybe that's fine. Did it help? No. Did it hurt? Not really though either. Right? So up to you, I guess, on that one. Technically, all the phos in the side band had a slightly higher yield over the years by almost a bushel. So there is that aspect to it. By the way, both of those beat out the control very handily by 3 or 4 bushels on average. So that was significant enough. When we go over to if you got no banders, okay, you're just running a dual knife drill out there and you want to put your phos down, where you're going to put it all in the side band, or you're going to split a little bit in the seed row or into the side band. Well, we actually found that this one, it did have a bit of a yield bump, again, over a bushel on average over those 3 years, splitting that phos. So I think
That's with nitrogen in the sideband.
That's with nitrogen in the sideband.
That's important.
All of the
That's
nitrogen.
important. Yeah. Like if you fall applied your fertilizer or got nitrogen out of the equation, it'd be a little bit of a
Well, it goes back to the whole
Exactly.
It's like basically the Trimax setup.
Exactly.
But in that case, right, and it comes back to our hot banding situation, right? I
Yep.
think where it was just you just get that little bit of a pop up, and I think it just helped out the crop over those 3 years anyway.
Yeah. Having that little bit of phos in the seed row. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was all about phosphorus uptake is really about nitrogen placement as well, right? There's that aspect to it where you can't just blanketly say, oh, just put your phos in the seed row or put your phos in the mid row. If someone asks, right, there's got to be a follow-up question like, where's your nitrogen?
Where's your nitrogen? Yeah.
Where does that go? And then we can maybe dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Let's talk about wheat. So this one, seeding rates, wheat and phosphorus, wheat and fertilizer in general. Have we seen fertilizer damage to wheat? Yes, have seen in the past. Is it as susceptible to phosphorus placement? I would say way less. Way less than canola.
Yeah.
Right? It can just tolerate so much more in the seed row with that one. So when we talk about our mid row and Trimax trials here with it, one of the biggest things, we didn't really split phosphorus. I've never found a great response of phosphorus, even with a single knife and banders, to split that phosphorus out. Just put it all in the seed row.
There's a lot of people that are actually pushing phos and potash levels in the seed row way past safe fertilizer recommended rates in the SAS fertilizer guide.
Yeah.
Historically, it's always been 50 pounds of actual split between P and K. There's a lot of people that are pushing way up to 75 plus actual pounds and not really.
And we've done that. Have we seen a big reduction in plant stand? No. But slight, but not.
But we do see a yield advantage sometimes.
Yeah, well, the more in some areas, if you're low on phos, just putting more in the system somehow, somewhere, can pay off.
There's a benefit, yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't split phosphorus in the Trimax setup. We did split nitrogen though.
Yeah.
Again, going back to, okay, well, let's put a little bit in the sideband, the rest of the nitrogen out in the mid row with that Trimax scenario.
What do we find?
Not much again there, son of a gun. Yeah.
Yeah. A little anticlimactic.
Yeah. Again, what was interesting, I did notice, so we put 40 pounds of N in the sideband with all the phos. Visually looking, I did notice that it was actually a slight delay in uptake of phosphorus. You could just see that the crop was delayed. So we had a dry year here in 2025, dry year off the spring, off the get-go. Yeah. And even that little bit of N in there, I think I wonder if there was a little bit of just had to wait for that N to kind of dissipate before the phos got into it. Did it make any difference though? No, on yield it did not. Nitrogen in the sideband versus the Trimax scenario, there's no difference. The only one that actually had a difference, and it was a significant difference, was our single knife with banders. 10-inch spacing though. So all of our Trimax ones up to this point have been done with 12-inch. We've always had this 10-inch single knife with banders in there as our check. Kind of just over the years, we've always had this drill just to see where it was at. So it was almost 4 bushels better this year with that, right? And can you attribute that to the dual knife or anything? Who knows? At the end of the day, it's probably down to row spacing. Right? We know that.
Don't slap me, Curtis, but I think at one point it would be really nice if we could ask the powers that be to actually get a 10-inch space dual knife Trimax.
Well,
just to incorporate it into the trials, just to get the row spacing aspect kind of dealt with.
Well, that's what we do run on our farm, right? That's what the farm drill is. It's a 10-inch.
Yeah.
I guess 10 and 12-inch on dual knife really stem from trash flow, and that's what the most common was. You got a dual knife, it's usually 12. You got a single knife bander, typically 10. And now we're just seeing, kind of convergence of both of those depending on size and a guy's ability to manage the trash. So yes, I won't slap you.
Okay,
that's a great idea. That's why we did it on our big drill.
I might slap you back if you did. So
yeah, I don't want that. Yeah. Okay. So to round it all up, Trimax, are we still flirting with some potential with fertilizer placement? Perhaps, to find that perfect recipe in a lot of different years. Still playing around with some different things on it. Nitrogen, phos placements. I think that on canola, we know that we can confidently reduce our seeding rate with it. If we place our fertilizer, in a safe manner, not really in the seed row or very, very little in the seed row, and nitrogen a little bit further away, we know that we can be confident even in dry air that we're going to get the plants we want. Wheat, I think one of the benefits from this Trimax might be, to your point, of phosphorus and potash. Guys are pushing it. Well, we might run out of airstream, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I've heard that before from guys where we want to put down more potash. We want to put down more phosphorus.
Possibly pump more.
I got a big fan on there already.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm putting down 120, 150 pounds of wheat seed already. So now actually using 2 fans to get that down is a real possibility, and it doesn't hurt you. I don't know if it helps you, but it doesn't hurt you, and you can get it down. So I think there is an aspect to that. Anything else you wanted to add?
I think we covered a lot of ground, actually.
Yeah, just fertilizer placement and seeding rates. I guess that's what drills are supposed to really target in on, hey?
Ah, there you go.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming in, Jeff. And I appreciate everyone taking a listen.
Always a pleasure, Curtis. Have a great day.
You too.